Bless you for the slow connection here, but it's Sunday right now. God bless you all. Welcome to my channel. What I'm going to this is kind of my launch. I'm going to do a launch of this movie. I think it's a documentary, more of a documentary, and instead of downloading on my YouTube, I'm just going to show it on my laptop screen, and I think you'll get a lot out of this. But this documentary, let me tell you something. For years, for the ones that have been following me, I struggled with this disorder called maladaptive daydreaming. Now, at that particular time when I was younger, going into my adulthood, teen to adulthood, I had no idea what was the name on it, but I was often searching for a face to go with my condition. I never knew what it was. I just thought something was mentally wrong with me. In a sense, it was. But I never had a name for it or anything like that. So, for the ones that's been listening to my bio, the last few weeks, you'll know where I'm coming from when I talk about my bio, my struggle for over 50 years with MD, better known as maladaptive daydreaming. Mela means excessive daydreaming. Okay? So, what I'm going to show you now, and this is a touching documentary. It's only a little over 12 minutes long, but it's a very touching documentary because this is dealing with people that struggled or struggle with MDD, maladaptive daydreaming, the same like me. Now, back then, I had no idea that there was thousands, even millions of people that were struggling with MDD because it was unheard of. I didn't know what it was. My family never knew what it was. Friends never knew what it was. They just knew I acted strange. I was secluded, and I used to just make crazy sounds and different things like that and movements with my body and fingers. No one had no idea what was going on then. But going ahead and years later and everything, I finally got a name put to it. Thank God for Dr. Ellie Somers from Israel that put a name, maladaptive daydreaming, on this condition. Now, the name may be changed once it gets into the DSM because it's not looked at as a mental disorder as of yet today. But I'm sure we'll be there soon because it is a mental disorder. It is a mental disorder. Okay, but the DSM just have not, cited it as if I could say it that way, as a disorder as of yet. But I want you to look at this documentary, 12 minutes, a little over 12 minutes long, and you're going to be hearing people that struggle with maladaptive daydreaming as well as I have. And it's good to look at other people's testimony and their struggles with MDD, not only here in the US of A, but around the world. Now, without a long introduction and everything like that, I want you to just check this out. I got my setup here. I hope you like my little little red carpet thing. So this is like a launching for me, for this documentary. It's 12 minutes long. It has its detailed breakdowns about MDD. Now I wanna warn my believers and my Christian brothers and sisters that it's a little profanity in here. Not a lot. I'm not pleased with that, but you don't have no control over the way people talk. So it's not a lot, but it is a little profanity, cussing from some of the testimonies, but it's not a lot. And I just went on and left it in there. I'm not into the editing or anything like that because I don't think it needs to be edited. It's just people just who they are. I don't like a lot of that on my YouTube or on my channels or anything like that, but I warn you, it is a little bit in there, and I hope it doesn't discourage you as being a believer. But you sometimes we're around people that just use profanity off and on. We can't cut everybody off, so therefore I'm going to leave it here. But it's not a whole lot, so just bear with that, and don't, just bear with me on that. So without further ado, I want you to look at this documentary. It's called Dreamers. Something like that. It's called Dreamers. My memory just gets bad sometimes. But it's like maladaptive dreams or dream people. But I watched this several times over and over and over again. It's about people's dreams. They call them dreams. I like to call them fantasies. But it's most dealing with people that struggle with MDD, better known as maladaptive daydreaming. Okay, so without any further ado, check this out. It's very detailed. It's raw, meaning that, it's just You hear from Dr. Ellie Summers. You hear from professionals. You hear people talking in a foreign language. They got the closed caption and different things on there, but you might not understand what some of them is saying, but just try to ignore that and go with the one. This was a documentary that was made by, I forget what country she's from, but she made this outstanding documentary, and I thank God for that, for MDD, Maladaptive Daydreaming. So here we go.
My name is Lisa, and I'm a maladaptive daydreamer. It means that my imagination, my dreams, don't let me live the real life. I lost connection with my friends, my family, and almost lost my job. But let's start from the beginning. When I was a kid, my parents used to fight all the time, and I ended up playing alone. It was not easy for me to make friends, and all I had were books and school. As a result, I've created my own world where I could escape.
Where the daydreaming and neurotic behavior started was right after my best friend Sean moved away. This was like second or third grade. I can't remember which. I started, I didn't have any more friends. And I was picked on and bullied a lot in school.
U většiny z nich to začalo v dětství. Nebo prostě v dětství, nebo někdy prostě v té pubertě, v adolescenci, ale že to vždycky jako už je dlouhodobá záležitost. Třeba s přestávkama.
This involves a unique trait, the ability for immersive, vivid fantasy.
I don't just see the daydreams, I experience them as if they were happening to me here and now.
The combination of having the trait and having other stressful circumstances can contribute to the development of the disorder, because it is sometimes for some people much preferable to live in an imaginary, self-created, self-controlled world than in the painful reality. And when they grow up, then it becomes a habit and living in a world in which they have full control.
In my dreams, I was partying or marrying the right guy. And another day, I was dreaming about fights and situations that I don't want to be in, but I couldn't stop daydreaming. The plots could be both realistic and fantastic, but all of them evoked strong emotions.
I've daydreamed whole worlds with their own particular nuanced things. I've created characters with backstories.
Možná, že v tom denním snění člověk potřebuje prožít hodně těch silných emocí, takových těch, co úplně svírají hrudník a bolí vás srdce. Nebo potřebujou vlastně jakoby z úzkosti se v tom denním snění na něco nepříjemného připravit.
For other people, it may look totally crazy. To daydream, I need music and some kind of movement, walking or pacing. It makes me fall into some kind of trance.
I would pace back and forth. Sometimes I'd sit on the edge of my bed and I would speak out loud.
It also has some unique features in the sense that it, in many cases, requires some sort of movement which we don't understand the function of, either walking, pacing, rocking, and in many cases also there is a great importance to music, to playing music as to evoke like a musical score of a film, to evoke the emotions.
If you hear a certain song or whatever, it might remind you of a scene that's played out before, and boom, it's right back.
I thought that once I grew up and leave my parents' house, I would stop daydreaming and enjoy my life. It was not the case. I realized that nothing in real life brings me pleasure and happiness comparable to my fantasies. I just couldn't stop daydreaming and it got out of my control. I've started less seeing my friends, my family, and almost lost my job because I was not able to concentrate.
Že jako maladaptivní už se může označovat to, které nějak přesahuje nějakou míru, které prostě zabírá větší část toho klientova dne nebo toho lidského dne, kde člověk utíká od reality.
It was like someone set you down in a chair and tied you to the chair, turned on the TV and forced you to watch these movies and images and scenes going through my mind. I could not turn them off. It was 24/7.
Apparently, the need to daydream competes with attention resources, and so demands attention resources. And some people occasionally, every few minutes, slip into a brief period of fantasizing, and that can interfere with concentration. So people can become more forgetful. The comorbidity of maladaptive daydreaming with attention deficit disorder is very high. Over 70% of people with maladaptive daydreaming have concentration problems.
We're not paying attention, so we make stupid ass mistakes, and people literally think we're retarded. I've had people think that I have a mental disability before.
I'm a textile designer and I'm an artist. And I found when it was at its worst, I didn't paint, I didn't draw, I didn't do anything. It's like I had no creativity left over for anything because it was all just sucked up into this disorder.
Every day I fight with myself trying to control daydreaming, and I always lose. It's like a drug addiction, and life without it is very dull. Sometimes I can handle several days without daydreaming, but then I desperately need another dose. I spent days and nights without leaving my room, nor eating and neither sleeping, just daydreaming.
Is an illustration of how rewarding this activity is. It is more rewarding than food, imagine, or than the need to sleep, or sometimes the need for sex. I mean, the amount of dopamine probably that it releases in the brain is incredible.
When it was at its worst, in real life, I was numb. I felt nothing. The only emotions I felt were in the daydream.
You can regulate your distress with this mental activity, which is fun, which is fine. Of course, unless it becomes your primary way of being in the world, in fantasy, then it's a problem.
To ask, how big a deal is this thing? It's like it's practically a third or maybe even a half of my life. In fact, if you really think about it, that is where I lived. And the real world is where I visited.
And there was times when it was so disturbing that during my walk, I would stop and I would just hit trees. And I've never told anybody this, but I would just hit trees and scream, "This isn't real, this isn't real, stop, stop, stop."
They're disappointed in themselves because of their weakness and their inability to control their daydreaming, and because they waste their life away in fantasy rather than progressing in life and advancing their goals. So that makes them depressed.
It becomes a vicious cycle. It's like, I daydream because I'm stressed, and I'm stressed because I daydream.
Well, procrastination is something to be ashamed of. Yeah, I think so. The time wasted, because you're wasting your potential and you're not sharing what's in your head with the rest of the world, which would most likely be very well received and be really well loved.
These are individuals who want to socialize very much, but are afraid to be rejected. So they create a very active and enjoyable social life in their minds, but dig their hole deeper in terms of being isolated from other individuals. So that's a risk there, because this activity, if employed excessively, is isolating.
It costs you real connections. You're not able to connect with yourself. You have a distorted view of yourself. You have a distorted view of the world, and you have a distorted view of people in general.
I was ashamed to ask for help. I've looked up information online and found studies of Dr. Soma, who was the first one to describe maladaptive daydreaming as a phenomenon in 2002. I felt such a relief. I'm not alone. There is nothing to be ashamed of. I have also found online groups of daydreamers with thousands of subscribers, supporting each other and sharing ideas how to handle maladaptive daydreaming, as there is no official treatment yet.
We borrowed a few ideas from treatment of addictions. For example, in improving the motivation, because as we discussed, it is extremely rewarding. You need to have a high motivation, that is to be able to tell yourself in self-statements what are the prices you pay for continuing to do it, and what do you stand to gain if you control it. And these self-statements need to be repeated daily to keep the motivation high.
Ale možná bych mu doporučila, aby si třeba sestavil nějakou tabulku a tam si zaznamenal, kolik jsem dneska strávil sněním, nebo čím to začalo.
I started doing journaling and I started, I guess, performing therapy on myself. And I started to deal with a lot of that pain. I realized my compulsion to daydream stopped.
Learning to manage my time and applying that time management to working on those creative endeavors has helped immensely.
If you're mindful about the external world, you cannot be absorbed internally, because you are aware of how you sit and how you wash your dishes and the sounds of the water and it's a skill of being present.
Já si vlastně myslím, že jsme nikdy jako cíleně nepracovali na tom denním snění, ale spíš na těch okolních tématech, a ono to denní snění pak buď trošku ztratilo význam, anebo se mírně změnilo.
I have struggled, and like I said, it's a lot better now. I think because of one, that my hormones have settled down some, and also I've learned a lot of technique to help control it.
If you have an empty life and daydreaming is your escape, you don't fix the daydreaming, you fix the empty life.
I think proper therapy for MADD is manifesting those dreams into reality, as well as learning how to be an adult and deal with the harshness of life, period.
There are coming new researches, and new data should lead to better understanding and treatment of maladaptive daydreaming and its possible inclusion to the new edition of the Manual of Mental Disorders. Maladaptive daydreaming starts as an escape mechanism, but once transformed to behavioral addiction, can ruin lives. No one should ever be ashamed to talk about it and search for support if needed. Everything's gonna be alright, and this time in the real world.
All right. Wow. That's the gist of maladaptive daydreaming. You heard from several people, several testimonies of their struggle with maladaptive daydreaming. Predominantly everything they said in each individual's testimony, I struggled with it. Especially in I would say my mid-teens. My childhood, yes, but in my mid-teens, I really struggled with it. Many people don't know too much about my mid-teens and my young adult to my adult, that I was still melodreaming. I gave it a little short name called melodreaming. I was still melodreaming. Okay? So many people that grew up with me and seen the strange things that I was doing, like my neighbors and friends at school or whatever, and especially my family, don't know too much about my struggle. They may have thought I even stopped, but it got even worse in my adulthood, especially when I started getting into drugs and smoking pot and stuff like that. Many people don't know about that time, but I've done a little bio on that in my previous videos. You can check that out. But it's good to hear other people's testimony, not only my own. Other people's testimony that give you a understanding of this phenomenon called maladaptive daydreaming. You know, people know about ADHD, Many people know about autism. Many people know about OCD, PSD, different, it's all ADD and neurodivergence and different kind of disorders. But no one, I can go down the street or walk in my job and ask people have they ever heard of MDD. Many people would think the acronym means something else, depression disorder. But MDD, as in maladaptive daydreaming, I would say 8 or 9 out of 10 people never heard of it. Never heard of maladaptive daydreaming. Because it's a name that was just coined by Dr. Ellie Summers, the older guy with the gray hair from Israel. Ellie Summers coined it, maladaptive daydreaming. Now the name may change. He believes the name may change, shortened up once it goes into the DSM as a mental disorder. But he coined the name maladaptive daydreaming by, if you see my previous video, breaks down his story of what got maladaptive daydreaming exposed. And I'm just so glad. I often say thank God that it was. People are finally, scientists and clinicians and psychologists are looking more into this phenomenon called, for now, maladaptive daydreaming. And this is I often say, I was talking to my fiance the other day because she struggled with fibromyalgia. I'm going to do a little something study on that. I'm going to do a little docu on that as well in the future. From fibromyalgia as well as panic attacks. And mental disorders is one of my top priorities besides my ministry of writing, dividing God's word. But those priorities that I believe many believers and Christians struggle with it as well, do not know, have no idea, not even scientists, what causes it. Only God knows. The true meaning of our struggles, even if you struggle with ADHD, autism, neurodivergence, or, ADD or whatever, only God knows the source. Many Christians might look at the spirit world or demonic, all of that. I look at it as the fall of man. When sin came to the world, it warped, perverted humanity as well as animal world, as well as everything else, as well as our brains. So sin in the world itself did not only affect the way we act and why we do bad things, it affected the development of our bodies, the development of our brains. Even trees have disorders, even grass is disordered, even animals, that have some type of forms of disorder, some worse than others. So the corporate enemy of it all is the enemy itself, Satan and sin. No doubt about that. But the scientific world don't look at it that way. The majority of the scientific world don't look at a biblical perspective like I do, or a spiritual perspective, when it comes to sin. That's why some of us are deformed or our brain is disconnected. Even if it's genetic, it's still because of our imperfectness of born in sin since the fall of man, period. Okay, now I'm going to talk about that later on down the line, but I wanted you all to see this documentary, and you know what my take is on that, scientifically and spiritually, creation-wise and biblically. I got to look at it both ways. But the only one knows exactly what these disorders are and where they came from. I have ideas where a lot of them started. Not so much the genetic ones, but where they started, And I'm getting to that, because you got the environment, you got the medical field, you got shots, you got different things. A lot of this stuff, I believe, was started from that. But my point is, there's a broad of misunderstanding about disorders out there, including maladaptive daydreaming. And I just do more research now. With the information age right now, you could do more research about things like this. And I want to leave you with this. If you know someone in your family, your child, your brother, your sister, if you see them, especially the children, doing strange things, because it's hard to tell, because children go, look at it this way. When you see a child in their own world, a child is excessively not only daydreaming, but they already create their own dream. When they're a child, that's normal for a child. What's not normal is when that child grew up and be about 15, 20, 30 years old and still do the same thing. Live in those fantasy dreams. That's abnormal. Okay? That's called mala. That's called excessive. That's called extreme. So that's why I want to let people know we're not just talking about children's regular daydreams. We're talking about when they get older, they immerse themselves still in those dreams. Because you're literally supposed to grow out of it. But if you find your child coming, when they becoming a teenager, and they still kind of get isolated, and they kind of be to themselves and don't have a lot of friends, it's good to ask, if they're kind of closed in, ask them a lot of questions, because you don't know, not a lot, you don't know what they're going through. You don't know what they're struggling with. And most other times, like myself, we can't tell everybody because they have no idea what we be talking about. Maladaptive daydream is hard to try to explain to anyone because you sound like you're just talking crazy and making up things. Some people might say, I used to do that. No. I'm not talking about planning and making up a dream or planning to do this or planning to be a prince. I'm talking about you just about almost self-hypnotize yourself into your own little world. That's maladaptive daydreaming. Okay? I'm going to be getting more into that. I hope you guys enjoyed this documentary. Dream Prisoners. Please look that up, It's only 12 minutes long. Understand these comorbidities of any type of mental disorder when it comes to maladaptive daydreaming, ADHD, autism, and different things like the OCD. Study these things. If someone has it in your family or you just see these kind of comorbidities or kind of STEMIs that your child may be doing, a doctor won't know. Most general doctors, they're not trained in that, so they won't know. They want to give them a medicine and give them some point. No. Avoid that. Okay? I'm just giving you, this is very important. Please check out your child. Why they so closed in and they love being by themselves. You might say they're only a child. True. But if you just watch them more closely and then you got to let them know that there are regulations and certain things you got to stop doing with love and they can't stop it, then that's when you start investigating those things. I didn't have that growing up. I don't know what started it. I know my comprehension was bad. My learning was bad. I had a slow time learning things. I couldn't concentrate good. I couldn't tie my shoes until I was close to an older teenager or tell time until my mid-teens. So that was part of ADHD. I had no idea the spectrums of it. So it's good to see if don't just knock them and call names. Try to understand what this person is really going through. Okay? I'm going to talk about that later on. God bless you all. This is Joseph Brownlee, Sunday Real Talk, the study on maladaptive daydreaming. Looking for more information. If you like the content that you see on my YouTube, please, you are welcome to subscribe to my YouTube and everything. Now, this information is for information purposes only. That's my disclaimer all the time. This is for information purposes only. Okay, I did not make this documentary. This is not produced or directed by me. This is just freely on YouTube. I just use it to put it on my channel so you can see other people's story about maladaptive daydreaming. That's my disclaimer. God bless you all. Peace out. Love you all. And remember, you don't have to be saved first to be forgiven. You have already been forgiven. Now you can be saved and part of the body of Christ. God bless you all. Love you all. Peace out.